BBEG can't roll above an 8. That's it. That's the entire horror story. I'm running Curse of Strahd, and Strahd can't roll above an 8. So far, he's rolled 4 crit fails. The friggin' NPC Grandma can roll higher than him, and his highest roll has been an 8 to convince the party he's a drunk raven. In short, it's been a wild ride. Sometimes luck will favor the players, and sometimes luck will just hate the DM. My DM was running a game through Roll20 and it did not go well. Why? Well, the guy had like 1,000 tabs open for DM resources and the connection was spotty, to say the least. When we were looking for solutions, we actually found something pretty awesome. The Opera GX browser. That is right, this video is sponsored by Opera GX and their browser made specifically for gamers. The browser comes packaged with GX Control and helps enhance performance on your PC when gaming with your browser open and gets rid of lag while playing games and listening to music. Perfect when you have a lot of tabs but don't want them to hurt your gaming performance. The panel lets users limit the CPU or RAM they are willing to let their browser use and helps them to maximize performance. They also have a network limiter, which ensures that you are not maximizing your network bandwidth used by your browser. If that's not enough for you, Opera GX has all your favorite music right there in their soundbar. Through Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube Music, you can have your favorite tunes going while you're browsing or playing games, alongside integrated social media channels such as Discord and Twitch. Again, right there in your sidebar. If you're interested, download Opera GX on either your desktop or your mobile phone, so you can connect the two for more ease of use. If you download, supporting our sponsors does support us. And without further ado, I am going to turn back into an animated rat so that we can get back to the video. I have a horror story for you all that I am sure keeps a few kids up at night. I used to be a DM at game rooms at local anime conventions. It was really fun. Stay up late games with strangers and just have a really fun time. Sometimes I would get little kids at my table. Usually they were interested because their parents played or they had heard of it and wanted to give D&D a shot. I had no problem with teaching them how to play and catering the adventure towards them and their tastes. The day in question, I was a DM at a con where they had a rule where anyone can join the table because, and I quote, "it provides inclusivity to anyone, regardless of race, sexuality, gender, and age." Everything was going fine at first. I had a few kids that were respectively 12, 13, and 15, and I was helping them make characters and telling them about the game. We were getting ready to play when at the corner of my eye, I see a man. I call him a man because he was obviously in his mid-40s. He was wearing a Inuyasha t-shirt and looked lost and confused. He walked over to my table. "Hey, do you have any room at your table?" "Yeah, but it's for beginners. You okay with playing with a bunch of people who have never played before?" "Yeah, I've been playing since 1981. I can handle a few newbies. I can show them how the game is really played." This is when the red flag should have started to go off, but being in my early 20s, I had no common sense. Because of that rule, and also the game had not yet started, I just allowed him into the game. He rolled up his character quickly. He was a barbarian half-orc, while the rest of the party was a wizard, ranger, and bard. The first 30 minutes were going fine. I was running a one-shot that was pretty simple. Go to tower, get magical item, and bring it back to wizard. They started in a small town where they were tasked by a local wizard to help them. 13-year-old. "I would like to ask about the item. It is an orb that helps channel his power to better help the town." The man interrupts. "I'm sorry, what? That is not how orbs work." The man continues to interrupt me as he starts talking about how it is in none of the rulebooks. I tell him this is a focusing orb that some wizards use to help with their magic. He grumbles a bit and tries to talk about lore in the rulebooks to no avail. The party gets to the base of the tower where there is a large wooden door, where they need a word to open it. The wizard that hired them in question was a bit forgetful and, well, he forgot his password. 12-year-old responds, "Maybe the password is password?" And the man interrupts yet again to say, "You're stupid," or insert our word here, "if you think that is going to work." At this point, I'm a bit shocked because a grown-ass man has just told a 12-year-old that. This is when I should have asked him to chill out, calm down, or politely leave. I blame myself a bit looking back on it now, mostly because I thought I would handle the situation and deal with a problem player. I feel bad, but I just ignored that comment. 15-year-old says, "I would like to search and see if there's a hollowed out rock near the door. My dad loses his keys all the time, and he has a hidden key." And I say, you roll to investigate, and yes, you find a rock underneath that is actually a hidden word that says the words, password 123. I get a chuckle from the kids. The only one not laughing is the man, who crosses his arms in a get off my lawn kind of way.
This is not funny. I signed up for a serious game. I want the game to be serious.
He raises his voice at the last part. The laughs and smiles kind of fade away from everyone, myself being a bit of a smartass. We are just having a good time. You're supposed to have fun when you're playing D&D.
Dungeons & Dragons is a serious game.
Not really. I try to run my games to have fun with my players and myself. I really should not have been a smartass and said that, and I'm as much to blame as the man.
You run your games wrong.
At this point, I am kinda in shock because I had never been told that before, and this is really where I should have just kicked him out. I thought I could handle the situation though. Fine, I'll take it more serious. Let us continue. Things kind of settle down for a bit as they make their way up the tower to get the orb. He starts to backseat DM a bit, but I chalked it down to him trying to help? The weird feeling starts to fade a bit as they solve a few puzzles, and the problem really starts at the first part of combat. They are attacked by flying books. Everyone rolls initiative. The 12-year-old goes first. Okay, I would like to shoot an arrow. How do I make my attack? I explain how to do an attack and what dice to roll. The 12-year-old picks up the wrong dice and rolls. The man freaks.
You are...
The game room goes quiet. At this point, I tell him to leave because he can't go insulting players and kids, nonetheless.
No, I came here to play a game, and I will play a game.
No, you're being an asshole and a bully. You're not allowed at my table. The man did not like this and slammed his hands onto the table. The kids around me all turn pale, and I see a friend of mine who was also working at the game room pick up a hotel phone and I hope dial hotel security. The man then proceeds to completely lose it at me, calling me a garbage DM for not following the rules or respecting the lore. He starts dropping slurs at me and calling the kids' names as well. He grabs his character sheet and kicks the table and storms out of the room. The 12-year-old is in tears and calls his mom to pick him up. I sit down and try to collect myself. None of the kids want to continue playing, and I tell them that is very understandable, and I do not blame them. I later found out the man was kicked out of the convention for touching a cosplayer and raging at her when she told him to stop. Since this encounter, I have learned I still teach kids how to play, and I have a lot of fun doing it. My only rule now is that they have to be all in the same age range. TLDR. Older man joins a beginner D&D one-shot for children, gets mad the DM and the kids are not taking the game seriously, and makes a huge scene and makes one of the kids cry. That is unfortunate, and I totally believe that this story happened. Why? Because I have seen and heard convention horror stories that are just about as bad as this. You would be shocked the kind of insane neckbeards and incels that are brought out in convention spaces. Someone screaming and yelling at kids is pretty much the least of your concerns when it comes to convention horror stories. That is a league in its own that I do not even want to touch. In terms of the story itself, everyone has a different way of playing D&D. Some play serious, some play jokey. When I was talking to Crick Crab on my Roll for Insight podcast, we both had very different styles of running D&D, and that is okay. The only way to play D&D wrong is, well, if people aren't having fun. And let me tell you, yelling and screaming at people because they're playing the game wrong is definitely going to ensure a lack of fun, to say the least. This guy's doing nothing but ruin the game for new players, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst things you can do. Absolutely ridiculous. Thank God he got kicked out of that convention. Not sure if this belongs here, I just need to vent, but a few months ago, I joined a D&D YouTubers Discord. The YouTubers seem to be nice enough, but I keep feeling that this Discord definitely needs more moderation. One of the most active members is the motherlode of that guy's, at least from what I've read. I haven't played with him yet, thank God, but some of the things he says are very obvious lies or just blatant neckbeard garbage. The aforementioned person told us he encountered Matt Mercer himself at
some Overwatch event,
where he confronted him about the Matt Mercer effect, and
the dude genuinely felt bad about it.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. I forgot to mention that he also tried to start beef with Matt on his Twitter to say stuff like,
I would tell all of them how garbage Critical Role is to their faces.
I think that this is what you call an internet badass. Okay, hold on for a second. Let us together evaluate this guy's claim. Imagine for a second that you are Matt Mercer. You're sitting at a Q&A, maybe at BlizzCon or an anime convention, maybe the Overwatch League, it doesn't really matter. You're sitting at a Q&A and you're answering questions and, it's all a blur. People every 5 seconds asking you to quote JoJo lines or say something from Overwatch or maybe reference Critical Role, but it's all a blur and you're taking it in stride. But eventually, someone approaches you. You see in the distance, something is coming. The footsteps are getting louder, and then you see it. A Neckbeard, who then proceeds to rant at you for like 5 seconds before he is quickly ushered on by management because that's how these meet and greet things work. Or, let's go on to Twitter. Imagine that you're part of the Critical Role cast, say Laura Bailey or Travis Willingham. You're coming home after a long day of voice acting or Critical Role playing, and you decide to browse Twitter. You're browsing Twitter, no big deal, whatever, and then suddenly, you see it. Something beyond comprehension, something so horrible. A Neckbeard. And after reading this 1 to 2 second destruction of your show, you block and move on with your life. What I'm trying to say is that this guy is probably I stress, making all of this up, or at the very least, exaggerating it greatly. Look, I've seen my fair share of internet I am very badass stories all the time, but I have never seen one about calling out the voice acting cast of a Dungeons and Dragons show on Twitch. I mean, claiming that your dad is part of the SWAT team? Yeah, I've seen that. Claiming that you are an American secret agent with hundreds of confirmed kills? Yeah, I've seen that. Never have I ever seen somebody claiming that they're a badass because they tweeted at a handful of talented voice actors. Well, he tried his best, even if his best was spectacularly inadequate. For starters, I think it's important to mention that I'm a female DM, and this was a table of 6 other men. This was about 2 years ago, back when I was a pretty new DM and only 19, and this was my first proper long campaign. I was so excited, and perhaps a touch too naive. This story takes place at the beginning of this campaign, and it started as an island-hopping pirate adventure, where they ended up hiring a powerful ship captain named Martha. They needed her to take them to a dark place under the sea, something she was instantly resistant to on account of her wife having died due to the dark forces there, but they persuade her, and things go on their merry way. The first day starts surprisingly well. The party breaks off to roleplay with other members of the crew, and the rogue, specifically Arcane Trickster, is following Martha and asking about her past. Good stuff, I so innocently thought. I'm so happy my players are interested in expanding her character. Wrong. By nightfall, I get the infamous, unprompted,
I roll to seduce her.
And unfortunately, the rogue rolled really well, like a 19 or dirty 20. Well, I tell him that she's really charmed by him, and that in the future, if he ever needs to persuade her, it'll be easier because she enjoys his company. However, sex and romance is not an available path for you to follow on our friendship tree on account of the fact that she only lost her wife a few years ago, and more importantly, she's a lesbian and wholly uninterested in men. Oh boy. Do I get an earful of,
You don't get to decide what the dice do.
Wait, then why is the DM here? And also,
You can't just ignore my rules to keep the campaign politically correct.
That's a yikes. So, night falls and pretty much everyone is asleep, save for the first mate and quartermaster who are taking watch at the bow and stern of the ship. Rogue creeps out of his cabin and successfully sneaks past them both into Martha's chamber, where he promptly casts disguise self to look like her dead wife. He could do this because Martha keeps a portrait of her in her chambers, but anyway, he slips into bed with her. Well, Martha wakes up and starts freaking out. She jumps out of bed and brandishes her dagger at him, demanding to know what he is and what he wants from her. My logic here is that Martha is a savvy seafaring lass who has spent decades on these cursed waters, and thus is more than likely to assume this is an evil specter or a cursed creature trying to trick her, rather than believe that this is actually the woman she saw die magically revived. Cue whining about how I'm
Metagaming, and how I'll do anything to protect my precious DMPC.
And after I explain my logic behind her reaction, he just rolls his eyes and mumbles something about poor logic. Now he's going to roll persuasion to quiet her down and convince her to come back to bed, and it's his first bad roll of the night. Now, this bad roll was, of course, my fault because I recently nerfed him. This nerfing came from the fact that we had all agreed to point by our stats. He rolled them without telling me until 3 sessions in, when I realized he had 3 18s. Totally legitimate 18s. So yes, I had nerfed him by making him do his stats the way everyone else agreed. This was unacceptable to him because apparently they had rolled their stats on CR and D20, so I'm in the wrong here? Anyways, Rogue berates me for his bad roll. Martha is unconvinced by his performance and tells him to show her the wife's true form. Her wife was actually a Selkie, so proving her identity would be as easy as removing her skin to reveal that she's a seal. More whining about how this true form thing is coming out of nowhere, and I'm just pulling it out of my ass to block his path, and will eventually come to nothing, etc., etc., etc. Now, he's scrolling through his spell list looking for something to help him, and my young self is just panicking. When you start researching about how to be a good DM, most of what you read is about how important it is not to railroad, and to let your characters be creative, to yes and that this is a collaborative process, and you shouldn't force anything. So with all that running through my head and things spinning wildly out of control and 5 men just gaping at me not doing anything to help, I just kind of froze up. I was freaking out until he starts talking about charmed person and how he should have charmed her first, but it might not be too late, and I finally, at this point, got my crap together. The quartermaster, a very buff orcish woman, finally heard the commotion and came in and pummeled the hell out of him while he whined and complained at me. For you guessed it, metagaming, and whining to the rest of the guys for not standing up for him. The next day, they get booted off the ship onto a deserted, haunted island and had a much harder time getting to where they needed to go. I wish I could say I kicked him out of the party after that, but I was so afraid of making waves back then, and that rogue proved himself to be racist, sexist, homophobic, and every other bigoted take you could have, and eventually left because my
SJW campaign was too politically correct for him.
Since then, I've started 2 major rules in my campaign. Number 1, I always try to have another girl at the table. It just makes me feel so much more comfortable knowing that she'll have my back. And it really stems from all that boys being boys behavior. And it's helpful to me to have someone who gets it on hand. Number 2, and this is advice especially for my fellow girl DMs, please never feel pressured to do sexual or romantic encounters. I know they can be really fun with characters you like and players who respect you, but never hesitate to cut an interaction short if they're forcing roles and sex on you and your characters. You are not responsible for being the voice piece for your characters to get a fantasy nut off. Just because they roll well does not mean you are obligated to flirt back or take them to bed. Having your NPCs be non-romantic is completely okay. I need to get this out of the way right out the gate. Guys, people, tavern goers, this is not the OP's fault. It's the rogue's fault. I can already see the comments talking about how the OP is terrible and this is her fault for not handling the situation. In the ideal world, everyone would be able to handle stressful social situations right out the gate. And you know what? That would be great if that were possible, but it's not. We don't live in that world. People are people. We're not perfect. We can't all handle these stressful social situations that are caused by crappy, creepy instigators. And the OP did the best that she could. Could the situation have been cut shorter? Yes, but it's not her fault that it wasn't. It's the rogue's fault for instigating it in the first place. It's good on the OP that she learned from her mistakes and established rules that make her more comfortable while running games. The only way to play D&D wrong is if you or your players are not having fun. And if you're uncomfortable, your players are uncomfortable, that's the first way to not have a good time. So, making sure that everyone at the table is feeling good and feeling ready to play, is the first rule to having fun at D&D. Game. Rhyme of the Frost Maiden. Sessions into the game? 6. Players. From 6 players down to 4. Game difficulty? Hard. Player level? 4. The game itself was pretty difficult. For example, normal NPCs would all have triple attacks and roll 10 to 20 damage per hit. I love challenging games, and that's part of the reason I stuck around. The problem was I was a divination wizard with 20 hit points. One hit from a normal NPC would knock me out. I was pretty much forced to become a cleric to up my AC and health. I talked to the DM, and he said that if I pledged my loyalty to the demon Levistus, who was trapped in hell and had no power in the world above, I could become a cleric. Alright, the castle we had reached were all cultists of Levistus, and badly needed a leader, so I volunteered. I pledged myself to Levistus, and things were looking good. Fast forward to the next session, the DM tells me that Levistus can only turn me into a warlock and not a cleric since he's not a god. A bit confused as I had already pledged myself to him under the reasoning that I'd become his cleric. The DM tells me,
No, you would be a warlock.
which doesn't help my survivability whatsoever. I told him that's not what I wanted, and he said,
Well, you just become a warlock for now, and when you release him from his trap, you'll become his first cleric.
I wasn't okay with that at all. I later found out from my other friend that in the module, Levistus doesn't get released until level 12 to 13. The game continues into the next session. One thing led to another, and I asked my teammates to help me perform a ritual so that I could follow the same god she does, Odin. Odin matched the personality of my character, had the domain I liked, and it would allow me to bond with that player. The ritual begins, and I am immediately met by a giant god. No idea what his name is. A few moments into that conversation, I am pulled into the realm of Asmodeus? He tries to convince me to sign a contract. I read over carefully with my 18 intelligence stat. The DM makes me roll an intelligence check, and I roll poorly. Not that it mattered since Asmodeus is a god, his deception check is insane. I couldn't even possibly beat it with a natural 20. Oh, the DM made sure that I knew this. One thing leads to another, and the DM puts pressure on me, and I sign under duress. The DM later chuckles and says,
You'll find out about the fine print eventually.
Great. I finish the ritual off, and Asmodeus tells me that I need to confront the leader of Levistus' cult at the castle and 1v1 him in front of the cultists. Once I do that and win, I will control the cult and convert the followers to Asmodeus. So we do exactly that. We arrive at the castle of cultists where we were previously extremely friendly, and the DM tells us there is a magical blizzard and we are forced inside. We look around and see nothing. The DM starts initiative. 3 of us roll 21 for initiative, but the DM makes me go first. The DM accidentally left a door open in front of me with a campfire, knowing I'd take the bait. So I run for this campfire, not seeing any danger in the way. The moment I walk through the door and enter the tower, the DM says,
The door magically closes and locks behind you.
No checks, no sign, no nothing. I am now trapped and 100% separated from the party. You can guess where this is going, right? The battle begins as cultists begin attacking the group I am now separated from. Apparently, the entire cult I was friends with hours ago somehow knew I had switched sides and were prepared for it. Then it happens. The DM instantly teleports a CR-14 Ice Devil, which has immunity to fire, which were the only kind of spells I have. Resistance to all normal damage, blind sight 60 feet, and a run speed of 40 feet. I am a level 4 wizard with 29 hit points. I ask the DM where this thing came from. The DM says,
It just instantly knows where you are and teleports to you.
He attacks me 3 times before I can even make a move. 26 to hit, 18 to hit, 22 to hit. The creature has plus 10 to hit, and my AC is now 20 due to my plate armor. Yeah, I spent everything we had, 1,500 gold, for plate armor an hour ago to up my survivability for nothing. As soon as the DM rolls that 26, I tell him I want to use my portent ability and change his 26 to hit to a natural 1. He says,
You have to be faster. I already rolled the damage.
The problem is, he rolls damage a second after he rolls to hit, giving me no chance to even react. I plead my case and he begins gloating about how nice he is and allowing me to use it in order to save face in front of the group. I am now down to 15 health. My turn comes up. I use Misty Step to get to the stairs. I run up the stairs and he waits until I made it 20 feet across the top of the tower to tell me there's 3 cultists standing up there too. He tells me they see me instantly. I take a healing potion and I'm back up to 21 hit points. I end my turn. The ice demon comes up the stairs and casts a 6th level ice wall, doing 33 points of damage. I somehow luck out again and roll a 19 on my save, taking half damage. I am now down to 5 health. I spent the entire round discussing my plans to survive and get away. I was going to shield versus his attacks to up my AC to 25, Misty Step down and sprint away. It should have worked. My turn comes up and I decide to Misty Step down the castle to make a run for it. The DM tells me,
Oh, right, that reminds me, the blizzard outside, it deals 10 cold damage, no save. You instantly get knocked out before you can do anything.
What? Why wasn't I told that it was cold before I came upstairs? He replied,
Oh, it's not me, it's just what I rolled in private.
He then says,
You begin falling off the side of the castle tower.
At this point, I am super confused. First, I get instant knocked out, and then I fall off the castle to instantly fail death saves? I argue with the DM that I got knocked out by the cold on top of the tower, and I didn't even have a chance to move. He goes,
Okay, well then you'll be stuck up there with the ice demon anyway.
As a final act, I tell my Gibbler, a small beholder creature familiar, to go into my pocket and break a magical tablet that summons a snow giant who lives in a floating castle. This is an artifact he gave me as part of his Mythics setting. Everyone got to roll on a table for trinkets. The DM logs off and says he's done with this, and ends the session? The group spends an entire hour wondering what just happened, and we all realize that the challenge rating 14 Ice Devil is impossible to kill, especially as level 4 characters. The only chance to survive this is to be forced to use one of the wishes we got from the Deck of Many Things 2 hours prior. Yes, we had to all draw from the Deck of Many Things. We got 2 wishes, 1 changed fates, and I got a 10k XP boost, which he didn't let me level up with until I took a long rest, and we also got the Knight card, but never got the Knight. The DM cancels the campaign a day later, saying he's stressed. He's got too much going on with his life, and that's that. I later found out from my other friend who's playing this module that the CR14 Ice Demons are only in the campaign at the end of the game if Levistus escapes. He has to open a portal to summon them from his realm. And that's the story of how I made my DM quit by fighting to survive. I cannot imagine getting upset at a player for thinking and caring this much about the game. Now, this DM is a hostile DM. This is the definition of it, doing everything that he can to screw over players and make the game difficult for them. Now, some DMs run more difficult and challenging games, and that's all good, but going out of your way to try and ruin the experience for them instead of creating a fulfilling experience through challenge, that is the key difference. That's what this DM misses. He's not creating a challenge, he's creating a frustrating slog. Well, this DM missed a key cornerstone of what makes this game fun, and well, that sucks for him. Alright, well, that's the end of that. If you guys enjoyed this episode of RPG Horror Stories and want to let me know, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. I was also on Strike D&D's podcast, Ask DM. It'll be linked in the description down below and in the cards. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment call out with a question mark to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.